Good morning. Thank you, Senator. Appreciate that. Continuous stream of encouragement. The hour of convening has arrived on this glorious Friday morning. I ask that all unauthorized persons exit our chamber. It's my honor to recognize the Rules Chairman from Chickamauga.
Thank you, Mr. President. From Chickamauga, and I'm not going to tell you what it means, but it's an honor to be here, and thank you for your leadership in this special session that hopefully today will be the last day in the Senate, but you just never know. Today, according to the Senator from the 56th, it's National Play Monopoly Day, which he likes to do by himself sometimes. It's also, according to the Senator from the 7th, is National John Bullock Wear Your Jeans Today. So it's just a great day to commemorate so many fine people. And Mr. President, under your leadership and tutelage, the journal's been read and found to be correct.
I'm waiting. Don't you normally have like daily facts or something like that? Did you forget to write anything down today? Can you use the microphone?
There is nothing about Georgia on my daily fact list, so I had to make it up. Other than that, it's good.
That's so unusual for you. Is there objection to dispensing with the reading of the journal? The chair hears none, and the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. All senators who have bills and resolutions, please bring them forward to the Secretary's desk at this time. Mr. Secretary, will you please read House bills and resolutions for the first time?
Just this one, right? Yep. House Bill 11EX by Representative Anderson of the 10th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to authorize the city of Cornelia, Georgia to exercise all redevelopment and other powers under Article 11, Section 2, Paragraph 7B of the Georgia Constitution and Chapter 44 of Title 36 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated, the Redevelopment Powers Law as amended, and for other purposes.
State and local government.
That completes the order, Mr. President.
Mr. Secretary, will you please read reports of standing committees?
Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Rules has had under consideration the following legislation. Has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. SR 33EX do pass by substitute, respectfully submitted. Senator Mullis of the 53rd District, Chairman. That completes the order.
Mr. Secretary, will you please read bills and resolutions for the second time?
Senate Resolution 33EX by Senator Harbison of the 15th. DuBose, Minister Edward O. Recognize. That completes the order.
All right, it's now time for a morning roll call. It is now time for a morning roll call. Are there any motions to excuse? The chair recognizes the majority whip.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senators from the 1st and the 3rd.
Without objection, the senators from the 1st and the 3rd are excused. The chair recognizes the senator from the 33rd.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, y'all. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 38th for business outside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senator from the 38th is excused. The chair recognizes the senator from the 27th.
Good morning, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 28th.
Without objection, the senator from the 28th is excused. The chair recognizes the senator from the 4th. He waves. Let me introduce you to the senator from the 19th. Chair recognizes the senator from the 40th.
Good morning, Mr. President. I ask for your unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 55th.
Without objection, the senator from the 55th is excused. Are there any additional motions to excuse? Chair recognizes the senator from the 13th.
Mr. President, I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 12th, please.
Without objection, the senator from the 12th is excused. Better late than never. The secretary will call the roll of senators. Signify your presence by voting the A switch. Secretary will unlock the machine. All right, it's now time for our morning devotional, and I'd ask that all senators take your seats, cease all audible conversations, and ask our doorkeepers to secure the chamber at this time. I'd like to recognize the senator from the 33rd to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance and to introduce to us our chaplain of the day.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let's stand for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now the Georgia flag. I pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag, to the principles for which it stands, wisdom, justice, moderation. Good morning, Mr. President, my fellow senators, colleagues, friends, and y'all. I gotta get out my dollar store glasses here. I went to the eye doctor and he said I had to pay $500 for a pair of glasses. So I walked across the street to the dollar store and brought 10 for $10. But that's not what I'm here for today. Today I'm here to introduce Jeremy Abernathy, who is the founding partner of the law firm Abernathy, Ditzel, Hendricks, and Bryce, LLC, located in Marietta, Georgia, y'all. For his stellar courtroom advocacy, Jeremy was recognized by Georgia Trend as a legal elite attorney in 2013 and a super lawyer in the area of family law in 2015 through 2021. A super lawyer is voted by their peers as the top 2.5% of lawyers in the area of law they practice. Jeremy was also recently appointed as the first African-American judge in Woodstock, Georgia, Cherokee County Municipal Court. Jeremy also serves his community as the senior pastor of Noonday Missionary Baptist Church in Marietta, Georgia, a church founded in 1888. He also serves as the governance chair of Must Ministry, a nonprofit organization in Cobb County. He also serves as the board of trustee for Mount Perrin Christian School. Jeremy is a member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, and he and his wife Tiffany have 3 daughters, Haviland, Kendall, and Emery. Pastor Jeremy is a wise person cut from the same cloth as Solomon. I remember one time an elderly lady had problem passing gas in silence during the church ceremony. She asked him for his advice, and he said, maybe you should get some new batteries for your hearing aid. And now I present Pastor Abernathy.
Well, God bless and good morning. Thank you, Senator Dockerat, for that wonderful introduction. And to the Lieutenant Governor, thank you very much. To all the distinguished senators that are here present today, thank you so much for the opportunity to allow me to share this morning. Also, to my lovely wife, Tiffany, thank you for being here with me today, and to my oldest daughter, Haviland, who is a freshman at Georgia State. She plays softball there, and my other 2 daughters are not able to be here this morning. My middle daughter, she is actually en route to Macon as she is preparing to compete in the competition cheerleading state championship on tomorrow. Hopefully they can pull it off, and if so, that will be their 10th state championship in a row. A wonderful feat. And to my youngest daughter, who's not here, she's not here because she had a French test this morning. And I told her last night, I said, Emery, are you going to come and watch Dad tomorrow? I'll be at the state capitol. And she responded, au contraire, mon frère. Tuition dollars at work there. I trust that you all are filled with anticipation about Thanksgiving Day, which is right on the horizon. In less than 7 days, I absolutely cannot wait to be the first to tear off a drumstick from the fried turkey that my father-in-law will present. I can already hear and see my father stirring the gumbo pot as he is preparing the gumbo to perfection. I can also see the eyes of the cooks as they watch and wait for nods of affirmation from all of those that will be eating the macaroni and cheese, the green bean casserole, and the cornbread. I'm looking forward to spending time with friends and family as we watch a full slate of sports on TV. Perhaps I'm not looking forward to some of the guests that will overstay their welcome. But certainly, Thanksgiving Day is a time of family, a time of fellowship, and of course, great food. But I would encourage us all today to not just celebrate Thanksgiving on one day or during one particular season, but in each and every day to find those apparent reasons that we all have to offer thanks. I recall in Luke's Gospel, chapter 17, it's there where Jesus encounters 10 lepers who are quarantined because of their hopeless condition. Jesus encounters the lepers, and there he stops, he speaks to them. He tells them to go and show themselves to the priests. They, as they went to go and show themselves to the priests, the Bible tells us there that they were healed. 9 of these 10 lepers, they rushed back into the throes of society. And only one leper, only one, returned to give thanks. I presume that the one leper that returned to give thanks knew that the reason why his transformation happened was because of the amazing grace of God. And for that reason alone, he wanted to ensure that he gave gratitude to Jesus. The amazing grace is that great soul-stirring hymn written by John Newton. We know that Newton had his share of life tragedies. I found that Newton's mother died when he was 6 years of age. Newton also was able to barely escape death as he was caught in the middle of a storm. Newton also made a terrible decision to become a slave trader, and later on, Newton, we learn he became deathly ill. Well, Newton recovered. Newton repented. And Newton knew that his change, his transformation, that it was only by the amazing grace of God. I challenge us here today to take those lyrics and apply them to our walk and find those reasons to show gratitude and show thankfulness to a great and merciful and gracious God. If you would, please join me in prayer. Most gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for your love. We thank you for your mercy. And we thank you for your amazing grace. We thank you for your amazing grace that is the source of every good gift that you have bestowed upon us. in appreciation of that amazing grace. Lord, I pray that we would discharge our duties in a very diligent and dedicated fashion, honoring you and bringing glory to you. Father, I pray for this great body of leaders. I pray for their families. I pray for everything that their hands touch. And we give you all the glory because indeed you are amazing. In your name, the name above all names, we pray. Amen. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Senate will come back to order. Are there any unanimous consents? The chair sees none. Does any senator wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? Chair recognizes the majority leader.
I was telling our pastor today that the story of the lepers was actually part of my reflection this morning, so it's hit me twice in one morning, so there must be a message that I'm really, really supposed to be paying attention to there. But one of the things that the thankfulness that I wanted to bring out is all those people that work for us, our office staff, all those people that keep us straight, that take care of our constituents when we're not there. I'll keep talking. All those people that take care of us, that enable us to come out here on the floor and do this work here, I am thankful every day for them. But I'm especially thankful for two that we have in our suite. The assistant to our distinguished appropriations chair, Kathleen, had her birthday yesterday. Tomorrow, my chief of staff has his birthday. So I just wanted to get up and publicly thank both of them, wish them a happy birthday, and tell them how much they mean to us. Mr. President, I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 39th for a point of personal privilege.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. President, and hello to my Senate colleagues. Georgia has a problem. It is a problem that extends from the core of Atlanta to the outskirts of Clinch County. It's a problem in urban, suburban, ex-urban, and rural areas alike. It's one that's been discussed in the news, in this chamber, and at dinner tables across the state and throughout the city, and that problem is crime. Homicides, aggravated assaults, carjackings, burglaries, the list goes on. Perhaps my constituents are feeling it more than most. Over the next 11 days, Atlantans will go to the polls again to elect their choice for the 61st mayor of Atlanta. I have no doubt that the mayor-elect, he or she, will be thoughtful in confronting and tackling all issues. I have no doubt that they will strive to improve this great city I've called home for the past 23 years. Both mayoral candidates have been forthright in sharing their ideas and plans for improving public safety, and I assure you, whomever the people of Atlanta choose, those of us in the City of Atlanta delegation will be part of the effort to push the administration on important issues, as well as strengthen and deepen the relationship between the city and the state. As a matter of fact, plans are already in place for a meeting with the mayor-elect within days after the election. But today I rise, and the good senator from the 6th will follow, to call on both mayoral candidates to agree to a few specific measures, actions to begin to take on day one to make our city safer. The first measure should be to open the Atlanta City Detention Center to full capacity. Listen, it is open now. It is being used in narrow ways. We need to expand that. There are beds that can and must be utilized. Just last week, it was announced that part of the facility will be used as a diversion and mental health center, and that's a good start. Let me be clear, not everyone needs to be arrested, booked, and incarcerated, but we also cannot allow serial offenders to continue making our residents unsafe. Investments must be made in hiring the necessary staff to get the detention center running again. We must send a clear message that Atlanta will not be the playground for criminals. The second measure should be to commit to adopting police-based programs that seek to respond more effectively to incidents involving the mentally ill. We know that so much of what is happening is due to psychosis, people who are on drugs, people who actually need help, and jail and our emergency rooms are not the place for them to get that. Officers in this type of program should be trained by mental health professionals in the complex dynamics of mental illness and techniques for de-escalating confrontations. They must focus on partnering with local mental health providers to match mentally ill individuals with local providers. We need a commitment to adopting a program of 24/7 mental health support and care in our jail. The third measure is equally important to breaking the cycle of crime. The city must create and provide more opportunities for our vulnerable young people so they are not drawn into a life of crime. We must expand the At Promise Youth Center system, open up our rec centers, and develop specific initiatives to expand the minds and the talents of our young people. The people of Atlanta are demanding action, and it is on their behalf that I rise today. I love my city. I know that by working and holding each other accountable, we can once again have the safe streets and vibrant neighborhoods. This is not just a dream or a wish. It will be our reality, and I'll work every moment of every day to achieve success. I am urging both candidates to take our call and allow us to work hand in hand with you to improve the public safety in our city as soon as you are elected. Thank you, and I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 6th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I woke up yesterday to headlines that 2 young men, 17 and 18-year-old high school students, had been detained on suspicion of murder of a 24-year-old grad student. You may be thinking to yourself, wow, city of Atlanta, again. But this was in Alpharetta, the district of a particular senator who seems to be more focused on my district than his own. And it brought home the point to me, and something that I think all of us in this chamber should know or should think about, is that we have a public safety issue. We have a crime issue. We have a gun issue. We have too many guns on the street. But it's not a city of Atlanta issue, as I said. It's one that affects every part of this state, every state in this union. And while it's a national and statewide problem, it's also a problem that demands local leadership, just like the senator from the 39th said. And when I speak to my constituents, they tell me they feel ignored, they feel unheard by city officials in Atlanta. It feels like the city of Atlanta is not open for business, right? Things aren't getting done. And that means everything. It's not even a public safety thing as much as it's, zoning issues or code violations, all the stuff that has to happen in a very complex city to make it work. On November 30th, Atlantans will elect a new mayor. It's either going to be City Council President Felicia Moore or Councilman Andre Dickens. But it's crucial, it's so crucial, that each of them recognize the seriousness of the issues before them. And I think they know that. I think they know how serious things are with respect to the city, but also with respect to the state. But one thing that I want to talk about, particularly in terms of solutions, is just I want us to focus on how interconnected our public safety system is with our system of justice, right? Because I hear we need more police on the streets. Well, guess what? We don't have the beds for folks to be detained in terms of the jails. Then I hear, well, what about more laws, more crimes? We can't even handle what we have right now. And it's all coming from the pandemic, right? It's a backlog from being shut down for so long. So a few of the things that I would really like to see happen almost immediately. I would like for the city of Atlanta to commit to giving funds to the Fulton County District Attorney's Office to help with the backlog to clear it, right? I mean, we're talking about a 2 or 3 year backlog. And so until we can clear those, it's just going to continue to build up, and people are continue to have issues in terms of public safety. I also call on them to look into what Cobb County is doing. Cobb County is now going to provide 24/7 mental health care in their jails, 24/7. They are a model for the rest of this state. And Sheriff Craig Owens, he should be applauded for that. He saw a problem and he's trying to solve it, right? And that's what we're supposed to do as leaders. It's not just about talking about problems and jumping up and down about it. It's about actually sitting down, getting in the room, being adults, and trying to solve it. And sometimes we're wrong, right? But we've got to give each other some grace too, because nobody has the answer. There's no one silver bullet to this. But just because there's not a silver bullet or we don't know exactly what is going to work doesn't mean that we just can throw up our hands and say, well, we may just need to ride this out. That's untenable. The city of Atlanta deserves better. My constituents deserve better. The state deserves better. This city is too important. It's too important. And so for everybody who can vote, please do be mindful, look at the candidates, and then with respect to the candidates, we look forward to working with you to move this city forward and to deal with the very significant issues that we have before us. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 20th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I want to publicly thank my legislative assistant, Ryan Miller. She's been working with me for 2 years and has done an outstanding job, been my real right hand, and she is taking a position with the Georgia Hospital Association and will be leaving us in the leadership suite, but we'll still see her at the Capitol. So thank you, Ryan, for your great service to my constituents in the state of Georgia and to the Senate. On a more somber note, earlier this week on Tuesday, former mayor of Perry, Jimmy Faircloth, James E. Faircloth Jr., he was 60 years old and he died in a motorcycle accident Tuesday. He was an outstanding mayor. He gave a lot to the community and to the city of Perry, and the city of Perry made great progress under his leadership. He was also my former Sunday school teacher and was real inspirational and active in our church, active in our school. So I would ask the Senate to please join me in a moment of silence as we remember and pray for the Faircloth family.
Senators ask for us all to rise for a moment of silence.
Thank you. Amen.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 56th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Want to first wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving if we don't get to see each other before. I'm very excited to hear others talking about the crime issue we have in Atlanta and throughout the state. That's a very positive sign, and we all need to be working together. I appreciate the senator from the 6th is running for higher office and likes to get a jab in here. But the reality is you know what happened last year? Atlanta had more murders per capita than the city of Chicago. Let that sink in for a moment. More murders per capita than the city of Chicago. We can do better, and we must do better. And part of that is what I've said many times. We have a jail that is mostly empty in the city of Atlanta. And we have overcrowding, and violent felons will be let out because of politics. These are things that can be solved immediately. So I'm asking people to stop talking and start working together. We have held a series of meetings. We brought all the interested parties in together, and we've worked in good faith to solve problems. That's what we'll continue to do. But we can, and we must do better. So stop playing politics and start focusing on the future, because Georgians deserve better. Thank you. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the Rules Chairman for a point of personal privilege.
Well, I find myself honoring Josh McCoon by being in well today. And I want to thank you, Mr. President, again for your leadership of this great body and state. I'm here simply today to remind you of the wonderful life we have working with each other and to wish you a happy Thanksgiving. Now, a few weeks ago, I had 28 wild turkey in my yard. I haven't seen those wild turkeys in 2 weeks since it's Thanksgiving coming up. You think there's a connection there? Well, but look, Thanksgiving is for family and friends, and I hope you have a great one with yours. And that's all I have to say. So I wish you a happy Thanksgiving and a Merry Christmas after that, and look forward to serving with you again in January. Mr. President, I yield the way.
Thank you for those kind, warming words. Chair recognizes the senator from the 9th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President, and happy Friday, everyone. So I rise today to brag a little bit about my kids because, you know, I am that mom. So I am a mom of 2 wonderful young people that are starting their journey into adulthood. My daughter Imani turned 20 this year. I cannot believe it. Where did the time go? She is studying biology at Georgia State University, and she is a straight A student, and she makes me proud every day. My son Noah, he will be 19 this year, and he graduated high school this year, and he is off at Georgia Tech, and he plays football for Georgia Tech. He is a freshman, and as we speak, they are probably heading to South Bend to play Notre Dame. And I always like to call him, you know, before they have these travel trips and give him my little rah-rah speech before he leaves. So I called him last night. And, you know, it's a challenge being a student athlete. And he's been managing it very well. You know, he stumbles a little, but, you know, we call him and lift him back up. But I called him last night. It was 10 o'clock. I was like, no, what you doing? Mom, just got back from study hall. So he had, you know, he gets out of class at 3 and he is in study hall until about 10 o'clock on a lot of days. And then he has to get right back up and they're probably getting on a plane to go play. But I am very proud of him and I want you guys to look for him out there. He's a freshman. They put him in sometimes and sometimes not, but he has been playing this year. I'm going to give you his number. So it's Noah Collins is his last name. He is number 43, and he plays defensive end. So you guys look for him. And I'm only saying this because when our young people are doing good things, we should lift them up. And we know Tech has had some challenges in their games this year. And we come from Grayson, you guys. We are state champs at Grayson, and we are not used to this losing thing. So I just have to keep him lifted, and I ask that you guys do too. And anyway, I thank you. You guys enjoy your Thanksgiving. I yield the will.
That's a very inspiring message. And tell your son Noah I spent many hours in those same study hall rooms on the top of the Athletic Association building, and I hope he does better than I did. Chair recognizes the senator from the 19th for a point of personal privilege. And you're not allowed to mention anything about Georgia Tech football.
Thank you, Mr. President. I won't. I think the senator from the 9th said everything I would have said anyway. So, particularly about records. But on a more pointed, more important point, thank you so much for senators for your outpouring of help yesterday as we talked again about the foster children in our state's custody, how we've been able to reduce that number from almost 15,000 down to below 11,000 and still working hard on it now. I want to commend the governor and the commissioner who have really put a lot of effort into helping ending hoteling, which is something that's been important, a big issue in our state, and also to just helping children find permanent homes. On your desk, because of the questions asked yesterday, you'll see another thing about foster children and potentially sponsoring them at Christmas time. We took and tried to pull some of the ones who were older, who may have had, maybe about to age out of the system, so that we could really just take and wrap our arms around and embrace them in this time that's about to be another big question in their lives of where they're going. So if you'd like to help again, please see the letter on your desk can direct you to a website where you can read their stories, see what is going on in their life. If you would like to sponsor a specific child this Christmas time, just get back with me and tell me that child ID number specifically, and we'll make sure you get the list that child has requested in this Christmas period. Thank you so much for your generosity that you showed yesterday, and it's something that I knew very well would come from this chamber, but it was great to see in a bipartisan manner. Thank you so much, Mr. President. I yield the will.
Chair recognizes the Majority Whip for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, it's going to be a short speech this morning. We have a lot to get through today, but I wanted to come before you and also bring up a passing of a good friend of mine this week. Yesterday, the former mayor of Dahlonega passed away after an extended illness for many years. But Gary McCullough was a 41-year career employee of the Georgia Power Company. He was our area engineer and area manager in Dahlonega for many years. He served on the city council for 14 years, and then he was elected mayor of Dahlonega for 14 more years. He and I served together when I was a county commissioner back 20 years ago, and we worked well together and got a lot of great things done. He was a true public servant, a man of God. He was a deacon of the Dahlonega Baptist Church. His wife, Charlotte, is a beautiful lady. They have a great family with 3 children. Gary, Flint, Leah, and Molly are his children. We all grew up together. So I'm going to miss the funeral today because we're down here taking care of the people's business, but I would like for you all to join me in honoring his life and give a moment of silence, please.
Senators asked us to rise and offer up a moment of silence.
Thank you so much.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 47th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Said the 2 times to the well in one session. That's like a record. Said for me, I wouldn't do this, but I did want to let the president know I've got an extra seat for the Georgia Tech basketball game tonight. If you'd like to join me and watch the Dogs crush those little Yellow Jackets. But I did want to welcome my folks. I wanted to introduce everybody over here in my little back corner over here. I've got not only our school board, but our county commissioners and our elections office. They've been over working real hard drawing some maps and getting things worked out, and I wanted to recognize them and happy to have them. I hope you'll stop by and introduce yourselves. Said it is great to have folks from home, and the main thing is that they can work on the same page at the same time and get everything working for the betterment of folks in Madison County. So let's welcome them to the chamber.
I like our chances in the basketball game tonight better than I do the football game next Saturday. But Chair recognizes the senator from the 36th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I rise today to take a moment to lift up the name of Michael Langford, a lifelong activist and fighter for freedom, a mentor to youth, a presence in our community, a constituent of mine who has left this world this week from chronic illness at the age of 63. Michael Langford comes from a family whose name has been very familiar here at the state capitol. His brother Arthur Langford served as a House member, served as a Senate member. Many of us pass by on an almost daily basis the Arthur Langford Parkway, which was named in honor of the service of Michael Langford's older brother. Many of us knew him well. Michael Langford founded the United Youth and Adult Conference. He spent more than a year engaged in the search for missing and murdered children in that horrible episode in our city's history. And he was out there with teams of people leading the effort night and day. Senator James here, one of our colleagues, and her husband provided the food for energizing that search that went on for over a year. He wrote The Life of a King. He wrote and starred in it, and it played for years around Atlanta venues. He was a deeply devout person. His commitment to community really came from who he was as a spiritual person. And up to the last days before his death, he still offered counsel and guidance to others. He mentored countless youth. He worked for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. He was a chief lieutenant of Reverend James Orange. These are names that are very familiar to those of us in Atlanta. I would ask that as we mourn his loss and celebrate the incredible role model that he was, that you would join me, please, for a moment of silence for Michael Langford.
Senators ask that we rise for a moment of silence.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 14th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Anybody that knows me knows I love Christmas and I love this time of year. And shout out to my wife who has already got our 9 Christmas trees up. And I want to make sure that all of us have the opportunity to understand that's really what's important this time of year. But really, I rise to brag on 2 people, one being our daughter, Faith. Many of you watched her grow up and seen her name come up in many things and legislations we're talking about. But last night, she was hired to become the PR director for a gubernatorial candidate over in Alabama. So shout out to her. I'm so proud of what she's been able to do. And then many of you voted on a piece of legislation that we pushed through here, and we want to invite you up to Bartow County as once again we're going to open another museum late this week, and then next week it's called the Savoy, and it will be the state-of-the-art automobile museum that will be part of the family of Tullis and the Booth and the Resource Museum up there. So come on up to Bartow County and join in as we open and inaugurate the Savoy Auto Museum. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 32nd for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm here today to give a shout out to a great Georgian who was named yesterday as the new commissioner for the Department of Veterans Services. Her name is retired Lieutenant Colonel Trish Ross. She's an Air Force colonel, and she's currently the head of the Vector Center, which is the center that we have that helps veterans transition out of the military and into civilian life. It's great when the most qualified person for a job is selected. She's going to do a great job. She starts December 1st, so congratulations, Colonel Ross. We're looking forward to great things from the Department of Veterans Services. Thank you. I yield the will.
All right, we're going to move on with the next order of business. You have a consent calendar of privileged resolutions before you. Does any senator wish to remove a resolution from the consent calendar? Is there objection to adoption of the resolutions on the consent calendar? The chair hears none, and the resolutions on the consent calendar are adopted. Secretary, will you please read a series of privileged resolutions?
Senate Resolution 52EX by Senator Hatchett of the 50th and others, a resolution recognizing and commending the city of Helen and for other purposes.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and it is adopted.
Senate Resolution 53EX by Senator Hatchett of the 50th, a resolution honoring the life and memory of Deputy Lena Marshall and for other purposes.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted.
Senate Resolution 54EX by Senator Harpison of the 15th and others, a resolution commending PMB Broadcasting LLC and for other purposes.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted.
Senate Resolution 55EX by Senator James of the 35th and others, a resolution recognizing November 30, 2021 as Youth Legislative Assembly Day at the State Capitol and for other purposes.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? Chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted.
Senate Resolution 56EX by Senator James of the 35th and others, a resolution honoring the life and memory of Lamarcus Kwame Glaze and for other purposes.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted.
Senate Resolution 57EX by Senator Harbison of the 15th and others, a resolution recognizing and commending Dr. Kamisha Harbison and for other purposes.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. Are there any? Chair recognizes the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to suspend the rules for the purpose of the third reading and consideration of Senate Resolution 33EX.
Ms. Secretary, please read the caption.
Senate Resolution 33EX, by Senator Harbison of the 15th, a resolution recognizing and commending Minister Edward O. DuBose and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Rules recommends that this resolution do pass by substitute. Senator Mullis of the 53rd District Chair.
Majority Leader has asked for unanimous consent to suspend the rules for the purpose of the third reading and consideration of SR 33EX. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and it is so. Ms. Secretary, will you please read the caption to SR 33EX?
SR 33EX by Senator Harbison of the 15th, a resolution recognizing and commending Minister Edward O. DuBose and for other purposes.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 15th to present the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be very brief. This is just simply a resolution honoring Minister Ed DuBose, who has been a civil rights worker in the Columbus, Georgia area for many, many years. And more importantly, he is a retired sergeant in the United States Army who decided to continue his work for his country and his state by trying to help people who are otherwise lacking in voice. So I appreciate your consideration. Thank you. No question, Mr. President. I will yield it well.
You have no questions.
Thank you, sir.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? The chair sees none. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute? Chair hears none, and the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Questions on the adoption of the resolution by substitute. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the adoption of the resolution by substitute, the yeas are 46, the nays are 0. This resolution, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore adopted by substitute. Are there any motions to withdraw and commit? The chair sees none. We will now move on to the rules calendar. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption to SB 2EX?
SB 2EX by Senator Kennedy of the 18th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to provide for the composition and number of congressional districts, to provide for a short title, provide for when such representatives shall take office, to provide for continuation of the present congressional districts until a certain time, to provide for related matters and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Reapportionment and Redistricting recommends this bill do pass by substitute. Senator Kennedy of the 18th District Chair. The Senate Committee on Reapportionment and Redistricting offers the following substitute to SB 2EX, a bill to be entitled an act to provide for the composition and number of congressional districts, to provide for a short title, to provide when such representatives shall take office, to provide for continuation of present congressional districts until a certain time and for other purposes. Mr. President, a minority report has been filed and it has been placed on each member's desks. That completes the order.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 18th to speak to SB 2EX.
Well, good morning, colleagues, and greetings. I don't know about y'all, but I've been looking for this Friday. I suspect you have too. I want to present to you SB 2EX, and I want to begin by thanking some folks. I want to first thank all of the people on the redistricting committee. As y'all know, y'all heard me say, and we'll talk about it a little bit this morning, about the travels that many of the folks on that committee toured the state as part of our listening tour, to find out what the folks of Georgia wanted, not only from their Senate maps, but also from the congressional maps that we're going to talk about here today. Secondly, I want to thank our Lieutenant Governor, the president of this body, and I appreciate his involvement, I appreciate his wisdom, and I certainly appreciate his Chief of Staff, Macy McFall, and all the work that she did in helping and being a great resource, notwithstanding letting the Senate lead, letting the Senate determine what needed to be done here, but always being a great sounding board and a great resource in making sure that the trains ran on time and that we got to the point where we are today on Friday with an opportunity for us to all vote on this map that I know y'all are just as happy as I am that this is the third of the 3 maps that we need to complete to do the business that we've got to do for special session 2021. Finally, I want to thank all of you members. We don't agree on everything. Sometimes we agree on lots and sometimes we disagree on lots. But I want to thank you for the spirit in which y'all have approached this. And also want to thank, quite frankly, some of the folks from the Democratic side that have privately and otherwise made comments to me and others about how, you know, this really was a good and fair process. And some of which do that in retrospect of how things looked 20 years ago when the Democrats ran things, or 10 years ago when the Republicans ran things. But regardless of when, I appreciate those comments and about how we have had truly a fair and transparent process. So, as y'all know, this has been going on for months. We started in the summer with what we jokingly refer to as our summer concert series tour of Georgia, going around the state listening to folks of what they wanted and what they expected of the job that we had to do. We had the public hearings. We had committee education. We came to the Capitol for a day for any organization that wanted to come talk to us. And then we adopted the guidelines. And y'all have heard me talk about that, but I can't tell you how pleased and quite frankly proud I am that we came together as a committee and decided unanimously, all Republicans and all Democrats, as to what the guidelines would be. That is, what are the values that we're going to have that drive the process of determining the maps that we vote on. And those guidelines have been followed. They were adopted unanimously and they've been followed throughout the process. And as y'all know, we've also had opportunities for public comment in person, virtually, online. That same process that y'all were much a part of on the Senate maps have also applied to the Congressional maps. And something else that we did that, quite frankly, I think was very good and better than maybe we even anticipated, and that is we really put pen to paper and did some serious work in trying to figure out early on what the congressional maps ought to look like, and let's get that published out there so the public has a long time to look at it. Notwithstanding the truncated time of 6 to 8 weeks to do this job that normally folks have 6 to 8 months to do the job, we were able to work with the information that we got, and obviously the congressional maps are a little easier. You've got 14 districts you're drawing instead of 56 for our own personal maps. But nonetheless, we were able to publish a map on September the 27th, and that allowed for public comment for, quite frankly, almost 2 months now. And also, I commend the Democrats. They did the same thing. They worked, and they published a congressional plan that was released on October the 21st. And it sat out there for now a number of weeks so that public comment could be received on that as well. And dozens of comments have been received online with regard to the maps that we put out in September. We have worked to take into account all of the comments. I will tell you that this map fairly, represents all Georgians. And it is a map that we can be proud of. It is not gerrymandered. One of the words that we've used in looking at it, quite frankly, is it's a really technical word. It says it's a pretty map. It is. It's a pretty map. You don't see funky lines and weird drawn districts. It's a pretty map because you look at it and it is striking visually from the standpoint of it is not gerrymandered. So, that being said, y'all have got the map on your desk in front of you. Let me just go quickly and talk about a few of the districts. I'm not going to go into the detail that I did on the Senate map. Don't worry about that. But the second district, the second congressional district, starting in the southwest part of the state, is largely very similar to and largely what the Joint Democratic Caucus proposed for Congressional District Number 2. Similarly, CD3 is very similar to what the Democrats proposed. As you come on around, the 8th district is very similar, maintaining communities of interest, very similar to the congressional district that existed before. Again, some changes that y'all know were required by the population shifts. For example, you will see in Congressional District Number 2 that there is some growth because that current district had to gain, I think we had to add 90,000 people to it. So you can understand why a number of counties increased, and that, of course, had a ripple effect around the system. The first congressional district is very similar to what it was. Didn't have quite the challenges of the population changes there. Coming around with CD 12, some changes between 12 and 10 that really were necessitated as an effect of the ripple effect from the significant growth that we continue to see in Gwinnett County and the Atlanta and metro areas. Of course, across the top of the state, we have 2 congressional districts, the 9th up in northeast Georgia and the 14th in northwest Georgia. Those districts, while mountainous in the northeast and mountainous in the northwest, are really 2 different communities of interest. I know I've heard the senator from the 54th talk about the mountain range that divides that area of our state, if you will, and the difficulty if you're on one side of it to get to the other one. And we heard about that when the senator from the 54th hosted us in Dalton in the public hearing that we had. And so we've respected that. The 11th coming on around we were able to keep 2 counties whole and then 2 partial counties. One of the things that we heard from was Pickens County wanted to be reunited, and we were able to do that. And then the metro counties that you see before you, which again changed largely because of population drivers. So a few more specifics, and I'm not going to tarry on too long, y'all. This map meets the legal obligation of 0 deviation, meaning plus or minus 1 person. That's required by the Constitution. That's a much more difficult job than it was with regard to our Senate maps, which we didn't have that obligation, but nonetheless came within a 1% of deviation up or down in the maps that we have passed. I'll also tell you that the map you have before you complies with the Voting Rights Act. There are 4 majority-minority districts and 5 minority opportunity districts included in the map that you see. Also, keeping with the theme of the approach that we had in the Senate maps, and also the principles that we agreed to, which was we were going to really, as best we could, respect county boundaries. We've done that, and we've done a better job, quite frankly, than the bill that the map that we all have now. The current bill that you have before you splits 15 counties on the congressional district side, and that's the same as what we had proposed back in September on the September 24th map that we published. In contrast, the map that we have today splits 16 counties. The Democrat map that's proposed splits 18 counties. So this is the best version that you will have seen with regard to trying to respect counties. While there are some precinct splitting that's inevitable because we have to reach that 0 deviation requirement, we split as few of precincts as possible while reaching that goal, and also tried to find logical places to divide the counties that were necessary to divide. This map also very importantly respects communities of interest. Georgia is such a beautiful state with great people and such diversity of different cultures, different communities of interest, different drivers of industry versus agriculture. We all enjoy being Georgians, but there are a lot of different communities of interest, and we've done our best to recognize that in forming the 14 districts that we have to divide. It also recognizes that there are some large districts that often have to take in a lot of territory, and that's what y'all have heard about before. Rural Georgia has not had the explosive population growth that Atlanta and Gwinnett County and some of the metro counties have had. We've had to obviously account for that in the numbers. As y'all have heard me say, the main driver on all maps are population changes and the numbers there. We've also got our traditional districts at the corners of the state, and the cores of existing districts are largely maintained. While incumbents don't have to live in their district to run for Congress, every incumbent under this map, every incumbent member of Congress has a district to run in. So with that, Mr. President, if I have any questions, I'll be happy to answer, or I'll yield the well.
You have no questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well, and thank you for your consideration of this. Thank you for your cooperation, and ask you to please vote for the bill that you'll have before you for the last map of our special session. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. The chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd to speak to the measure. I want to take a second to recognize a former member of this great chamber. Mr. Ellis Black is with us here, and his beautiful bride. Sorry for that brief interruption there. Chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know we're all tired and ready to go home and complete this process and enjoy some Thanksgiving turkey. But it's important to not neglect the duty that is in front of us with approving new congressional maps. It's important to really study them closely. And I think you'll hear from a few speakers that will raise some issues that perhaps the presenter of the bill neglected to include in his remarks. So I'm happy to start us off and present a bit of a different perspective that is the perspective shared by millions of Georgians across our great state when it comes to this redistricting process. Stated plainly, this map does not fairly represent Georgia. Let's begin with just a few numbers to review that frame our conversation today and any analysis of our congressional map. There are almost 11 million Georgians. Our population grew by 1 million citizens over the last 10 years, and 100% of that growth was in communities of color, while the non-Hispanic, white-only population declined over the last 10 years. The growth also 100% in urban communities, while there was continued and fairly significant depopulation in some more rural parts of our state. In 2020, this changing population of Georgia elected Democrats in 3 statewide races for the first time in almost 2 decades. I'm proud, and I know we're all proud, to represent citizens in such a diverse, growing, and dynamic state. One that I know Professor Charles Bullock refers to as the growth South, as opposed to the stagnant South, which is some of our other surrounding states. So now, as a body, we are tasked with incorporating these dramatic changes to Georgia, to our state's population and political preferences, into new congressional districts. The citizens that spoke up at town halls all summer long, and many of whom came to speak before the redistricting committees, pleaded over and over for a transparent process and fair maps that would reflect Georgia's population and political preferences. Citizens have tried in every possible way to provide comments and alternative map proposals to the committee. Hundreds of people reached out to my office and asking how they could be a part of the process, how they could influence it, and the only ways that I and my staff knew to tell them were to come to public forums being held by the committees, and here we have this new tool. We have an online portal for the first time where you can go and register feedback in advance of maps getting released and then after they're released, although clearly not much time after they were released. And yet, when the committee hearings commenced, there were members of the committee that spent a great deal of time challenging members of the public and even fellow senators on whether feedback was provided or received by the majority party, instead of on the substance of the feedback being put forth. So I do want to talk about the public portal for just a moment. This portal was a step forward, and it was touted by the majority party as a way for the public to engage with the redistricting process. But it had numerous issues, and the mere fact of its existence can't obscure those numerous issues. It's very difficult to find on the website. Some members of this chamber and their staffs had trouble finding it, much less members of the public, the general public, who are far less familiar with our legislative website than we should be. There's no way to provide attachments, meaning no actual map proposals or documentation could be submitted via the portal. Does not have any kind of search function, and comments can't be downloaded, and they can't be sorted, and therefore they can't be amalgamated to sort of provide a true analysis of what is the feedback that has been received. These flaws were not lost on members of the public who were trying to engage with the process through the portal. One recent comment stated, "What is being done with these hundreds of concerns voiced in this portal? Have they even been read? By whom? There have been no responses. This portal is clearly a fake pretense to mollify us into thinking our concerns are being heard and acted upon. If our concerns in the portal are being read, how can we know this? Shame on those of you in power and desperately grasping to hold onto it." For a specific example, because the questioning of my colleagues who are members of the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus was so pointed about you did town halls, where's the feedback from your town halls? Let's be clear that at the committee's direction, Legislative Black Caucus used the public portal to direct feedback from their hearings to the committee in good faith that it would be received by the committee members. But they were accused repeatedly of not presenting their findings to the reapportionment committee. This dishonest finger pointing at citizens and at Senate Democrats is gaslighting, pure and simple. As the majority party and leaders of this chamber and of a committee stacked with twice as many Republicans as Democrats, it's Senate Republicans who have the responsibility to provide for a clear and open process to solicit input and alternative map proposals. This gaslighting is nothing but a distraction to undermine maps that weren't drawn by Republicans or were drawn by citizens, and to avoid attention on the last-minute introduction of biased, gerrymandered maps. It's actually abundantly clear that the majority did not incorporate feedback from voters who asked for transparency, fair representation of minority voters, and partisan fairness. Perhaps that's why there really weren't any speakers in favor of the maps before the committee. So what did this partisan rushed process deliver for Georgia? A map that fails to reflect the population changes we have seen in Georgia. It aims to give Republicans a 64% majority of a congressional delegation in a 50-50 state. It does not add any minority opportunity districts, despite all the population increase having come from communities of color. It reduces the number of competitive districts, bad for democracy, and redraws a recently flipped Metro Atlanta district all the way up into Dawson County. To tie all this back in together, gerrymandered maps go hand in hand with voter suppression to subvert the will of the people and attempt to protect the party in power. In a democracy, this power belongs to the people. We are in the people's house. None of our seats belong to us. The will of the people of Georgia is clear, and that's why we're seeing these gerrymandered maps. For the last decade, they registered to vote in record numbers, organized like never before, knocked on more doors than ever before, and they voted. Even when it meant standing in line for hours after a long day of work, they still voted. Even when it meant going back home to get the quote-unquote right ID or provide other forms of proof of citizenship, they voted. Even in the middle of a pandemic, they voted in record numbers. And the predictable response, in fact, it's really a cliche, is from those in power is to try to turn back the clock and enshrine white Republican minority rule. But the people of Georgia see this for what it is, another attempt at voter suppression. And do you know how they will respond? The diverse and dynamic people of Georgia, they will organize, they will vote, and eventually, true democracy in Georgia will prevail. Thank you, Mr. President. I'm happy to answer any questions, and if there are none, I will have my seat. I'll yield the well.
You have no questions.
Thank you. I yield the well.
The chair recognizes the senator from the 22nd to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm back again to discuss the Voting Rights Act, and it has been something I've been consistently talking about. But it's one because actually not an expert in it at all, but it's one that I've learned. And sometimes as you learn things, it actually becomes more clear how important it is and where the mistakes are actually being made. Because we say that we actually follow the Voting Rights Act, But what we wanted to actually find out is if that's actually happened. And actually yesterday's hearing, when we were in the hearing on yesterday, some things came to focus about some of our own misconceptions about how this actually works. For instance, I got the impression that many persons took the position or thought that the position was that maybe the VRA violation had to be done through purposeful discrimination. And I could certainly see that if somebody thought that a group was accusing them of being purposeful, discriminatory, or racist, how that would change the whole conversation. Purposeful discrimination can be part of a VRA claim, especially under the 15th Amendment and under Section 2, but it's really not what we're discussing now. What we're discussing now is more or less basically not only the process of it, but how it affects the African American vote, whether purposeful or not. How it affects the votes of minority, whether purposeful or not. In fact, the court, or the legislature, took away this purposeful discrimination or the intent test because it caused so much division and it caused so much division between persons. And so that was gone. It does exist, but it's not really what we've been discussing. So I get where persons may believe, well, you're saying I purposely or discriminate against, it's not what Section 2 actually says at all. What it really actually says is that, just to look at it so we can actually know what it says, since we keep kind of saying Section 2, Section 2, Section 2, I don't know if anybody's actually read the definition of it. Just basically says that the state or political subdivision is prohibited from imposing any voter qualification or prerequisite to voting or any standards of practice or procedures that result in the denial or abridgment of the right of citizens to vote on account of race or color. That's the general prospect. But then it actually then says, well, how do you prove that? And it says you prove that through a totality of circumstances, which reveal that the political process leading to the election are not equally open to participation by members of a protected class. And that's one of the key things, totality of the circumstances. So what our analysis is supposed to be, and what it's basically turned into, was racial bloc voting, polarized voting. That's all we really discussed. But that's not what the law is. The law actually wants you to look at a totality of circumstances to understand whether your procedure, in this case redistricting, has been one that has had that negative effect on minority voting. Also understand that even minority voting, or what constitutes a minority, is not even settled also. Certainly African Americans are, Hispanics are, but there's also influxes in the law as far as that is concerned that we could have addressed and we should have addressed and we should have looked at. So what are some of those totality of the circumstances? It's not just racially polarized voting. It's whether your body has a history of official discrimination that affected the right of members of the minority group to register, vote, or participate. The extent to which voting in the election is racially polarized. That's number 2 among many. The extent the state or political subdivision had used unusually large election districts, majority vote requirements, or other voting procedures that may enhance or discriminate against the minority group. The extent to which members of the minority group bear the effects of discrimination in such areas of education, employment, health, which hinders them the ability to participate effectively in process. Another factor, whether political campaigns have been characterized by overt or subtle racial appeals. The extent to which members of the minority group have been elected to public office in the jurisdiction is also something to look at. Whether there has been a lack of responsiveness on the part of elected officials of the particularized needs of the members of the minority group. And there are actually a few more. The point being, no one can say that this process is embodied all of those factors. When we start talking about whether we followed the Voting Rights Act, we have to look at all of those factors. That wasn't done by any metric. That was not done. We didn't look at that. And if we actually would have looked at it, we may have found that you had racially polarized voting, but you may have also found that maybe within that jurisdiction, there were no overt claims for race in an election, in a campaign. You might have saw racially polarized voting, but you may have also found that, you know what, those elected officials are responsive to all the needs of their community. But you also may have found that you had racially polarized voting, but the elected officials are not responsive, or there is racial appeals on the campaign trail. That's how you have an intelligent conversation about whether we actually are following the Voting Rights Act. Not just say, do you think you have racially polarized voting? Yeah, I guess we do. All right, that's it, it's over. That's not what the courts have told us to do. And then even with racially polarized voting, experts come testify. This isn't me saying this. This is the case law. Experts come in and say, this is the analysis that I use. Analysis, not gut feeling, not just what I think happened, but analysis. And the experts could have argued about that. And there are different analyses that can be used. We should have heard from them. We should have heard from them. Then we could have said, okay, well, there is racially polarized voting, but the elected officials in that area are totally responsive. So maybe this isn't a violation. Or there's not racially polarized voting because that's only one factor, but the members of those elected officials are not responsive at all. All we did was got caught up on one factor. And the court says it's basically 9 different factors that we look at, none more important than the other. Because we weren't doing this logically. We were just rushing through it. But you know who is going to do it? The courts are going to do it. The lawyers are going to do it. The judges are going to do it. The experts are still going to come in and testify. And we say, well, this satisfied the Voting Rights Act because we have so many majority minority districts. And the court's going to say, says who? It says me, I guess. Because you ain't taking no testimony from anybody. Nobody's come to really testify to this in a logical way. Because even the persons we had, quite frankly, they're rushed because, of course, we do instant redistricting, almost like instant justice. Everything is always a rush, but that's a whole other conversation about how things kind of go. So they're rushed. They got 3 minutes. So they're getting confused. They're supposed to be experts. They're confusing themselves about what's going on. That's not how to do this process. It doesn't matter what the end result was. It's whether the process was followed correctly. And it's big. It's huge, and it matters. It matters not only for this, it matters because race, that thing called race, has been the defining element in America. And it's only changing. It's only changing. These concepts are only changing. We are going to have to continue to deal with this because we are the most diverse nation on earth, but we have to deal with it and face it. So let me give you a couple of cases because this also came up. Harding versus County of Dallas, Texas, federal court case, 2011. The court in that case said, concerning the Voting Rights Act, the plaintiffs must first prove that the Anglo population in Dallas County is sufficiently large and geographically compact to constitute a majority in a single-member district. The plaintiffs, an Anglo minority, wanted to elect a candidate of their choice, a white Republican. None of y'all knew that. Because yesterday I got the impression that persons thought that the Constitution was being used as a us against them thing, and it's not. The Constitution, the Voting Rights Act, is for everybody. So here you had Anglo plaintiffs, white plaintiffs saying, we believe discrimination is taking place. They couldn't get past the first hurdle because you have to actually show that you're a cohesive minority, that you can actually elect somebody. But I guarantee you, most of you believe that this was being used as a us against them. You want to use the Section 2 against us. And sometimes by the testimony, I might even understand that. But maybe if we had looked at these type of cases and said, oh, this is for all of us. This is important. These are conversations that happen out the nation. United States versus Brown, a federal case, Court of Appeals case. A Section 2 violation was found where the chairman of the County Democratic Executive Committee, I'm sure somebody just jumped on that, right? And the Election Commission, who also is chairman of the Election Commission, found that the chairman, voting procedures were discriminatory. The chairman was African American. Here's the point. It's not us versus you. It's the Constitution of the United States that we're talking about that applies to everybody. And we have just run through it because we looked at the most sacred document that we have that has its flaws, but we just ran through it because we took the position, oh, it helps them versus us. And it's not like that at all. It helps all of us. And if we believe that, if we truly believed it, not just words, but if we truly believed it, we'd have went through this process thoroughly because we wouldn't have been afraid of the answers because we would have known through those other cases it's here to protect all of us. We don't truly believe it. At least the majority does not. I've never once said what the result should be. I just said we should do the analysis correctly. We have failed, not just because of this particular situation, but because we took the easy way out. We failed to tackle the most pressing problem that has always existed in this nation, and we had an opportunity to do that. And our only answer is going to be, well, they didn't do it in 2001, they didn't do it in 2011. Just imagine if your constituent came to you and said, you won't return my phone calls. And you said, well, the guy who was before me, he didn't return your phone calls, so why are you holding me to that? It's foolish. That's not how we do government. One of the things that is at stake is not just the next 10 years, but when you start understanding that there are serious concerns or conversations about, which I just described to you, does the Voting Rights Act even apply to whites? In its concepts, what you see it does. Now you have different minorities which are becoming prevalent. How does the Voting Rights Act respond to that? This issue of race is not going away. And we kick the ball. And 10 years from now, somebody else will come with the same issues. And it may be different racial components. And they'll want to look to us and say, how did they handle it? And all they'll be able to say is, well, some people said this racially polarized vote, and they took a vote, and that was it. Now it's up to you to address the most difficult issue that has ever faced this nation. And that has always been the intersection of race and class and voting. So maybe that body will actually live up to the motto that we say every day and have the courage to do this correctly. And with that, I yield the well.
Senator has yielded the well. The chair recognizes the senator from the 9th to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. So let's examine the transparency claim for a bit. When the majority party presented this map, they spoke in great deal about what they had done to produce it. They filled the room and talked about listening to Georgians, meeting population requirements, and complying with the Voting Rights Act. They gave us this information in the name of transparency. And so in the same spirit of transparency, I want to draw attention to some things that have gone unsaid. The first thing I want to point out is when these maps were dropped, Wednesday afternoon. We have not even given, and now here we are today, and the map's not up here, I thought it was going to be up here. But here we are today, so we have given the public less than 48 hours to comment, to look at, to give us their input on these maps. We did not hear, for example, what standards were used in determining compliance with the Voting Rights Act, or who assisted the majority party with determining that these lines were even in compliance. We were not given the name or contact information of the individual in the majority party that the majority party claims was specially hired by Legislative Council and was available to both parties despite repeated requests. We did not hear from our Republican colleagues about the reasoning behind some of these changes. Why, for example, does the 6th district, which needed a minimal changes in terms of population requirements, move from 3,500 voters out, you move those voters out to bring those same amount of voters, different voters, into that district? We did not hear an explanation for moving a majority-minority cities of Austell and Powder Springs in South Cobb County to the 14th district. And I'm from Austell, so I have a personal connection here. We don't have answers to basic questions about this map. The majority members of this committee did not answer questions from the public who came to speak on behalf of themselves and the community. The only explanation we've been given is that you can't look at any district in a vacuum, that every change affects all the other districts. But what they're saying is that there is a driving force behind all of their changes, but we know that force is preserving a Republican majority. That's the elephant in the room. That's the answer to almost every unanswered question that those of us in this room and the public has about this map. And I've had people reach out to me on social media platforms, my constituents. It's like, I don't understand these maps. And I go back to tell them, it's not supposed to make sense to you. This is designed to hold the Republican majority regardless of your input. The real reason we haven't had transparency is that there is a lot they don't want us to see. They don't want us to see the abuse of power. They don't want us to see the greed. They don't want us to see the suppression. But we've seen enough, and we know the truth. We can look at this map and see that it delivers a 64% Republican majority in a state that gave the GOP less than 50% of the vote in 3 recent statewide elections. But maybe we have enough transparency to see what's happening. We can plainly see that this is not the map of the people, not the people of Georgia. And it's not the map that the people of Georgia asked for. And we will be able to look at the party breakdown and vote count at the end of this process to see exactly who this map is drawn to serve. We had an opportunity in this special session. We could have listened, cooperated, and delivered for the people of Georgia. And I took it upon myself to look at the public comments. I went through the database. It's a little hard to find. You gotta dig a little. That's not transparent. If you want people to see it, you put it right on the front page that says House of Representatives. Give them that link. But I dug a little because I wanted to look to see what our constituents out there were saying. I'm gonna read a few of them to you because I don't think my Republican colleagues have bothered to look or take into account what Georgians are saying. A. Rice, Fulton County. The blatant gerrymander of Georgia legislative districts is incredibly unethical and should be illegal. Republicans are distorting representation in our congressional delegation and state Senate districts. It's ridiculous that Dawson County and Sandy Springs have common interests. Minority voters and Democrats are being disenfranchised all over the state. Shame on the Republican Party. M. Blackman of DeKalb County. As a longtime 80-year-old Georgia resident, I have been watching the news regarding the meetings of the 2 redistricting committees and the maps that you've drawn. Having participated in 2 of the public hearings you conducted back in the summer and a couple more starting November 3rd, I am very disappointed at how little your maps reflect what constituents said to you around the state. You did not pay attention when small cities requested not to be split into multiple House and Senate districts, and you bragged about keeping communities whole, but never mentioned how you gerrymandered most of the small cities. D. Badera, Forsyth County. To move to add Forsyth and
Dawson County's the GA6 completely alters its character and clubs in a diverse urban electorate with a highly homogeneous rural one. Compared to proposals for other districts, the extent and magnitude of this change is highest for GA6. It's clearly designed to suppress the voices, votes, and interests of the diverse electorate that currently comprises the district by electing a representative who will be beholden to its rural constituents at their expense. Such tactics descend from a long line of anti-democratic approaches going way back to Jim Crow, which seek to use the cover of democratic institutions to actively undermine our democracy. They speak to the worst of our impulses and must be called out. Manson of DeKalb County. The proposed GOP congressional map does not reflect recent political trends. In recent statewide elections, voters went slightly Republican in 2018 and slightly Democrat in 2020. We are a 50-50 state. An apportionment of 7R and 7D and 8R and 6D districts more accurately captures our political preference than the 9R 5D proposal that we have today. The process used by the committees has been neither open nor transparent. Hearings were held only before the census data was published. I think they were trying to say before census data was published. And no criteria are being given for the changes to the districts, and no public hearings on the proposed maps or plan. This is a map that ignores voters' preferences, derived from a process which denies meaningful voter input. Folks, we rushed this process. We didn't listen to our voters. We did not really take their comments to heart or their input. We refused to answer questions and then insisted that this was the only way we were going to engage. And that was shown by action. I will vote no on this map, and I will be able to go back to my constituents with a clear conscience. I urge all of you to consider what I'm saying, and I'm asking you to vote no as well. Thank you. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 5th to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. Friends and colleagues at the Senate, the redistricting process has failed to provide Georgia with representative maps in a number of ways. It has failed to provide enough majority-minority district for the State House, the Georgia Senate, and the U.S. Congress. It has failed to protect the seat of a number of female incumbents, many of whom are recently elected, yet trusted and supported in their districts. This congressional map draws the incumbent Representative Caroline Bordeaux out of what district she recently flipped. In addition to that, we have seen that with this congressional map and with the Senate map we passed last week, these maps are targeting women of color. The Senate map made changes to the Senate district held by the only Asian American woman to serve in this body, in this Georgia Senate, which will make it much more difficult for her to keep this seat. Now with this congressional map, the majority is targeting a black woman and only one of two in our delegation in order to redraw her district to make it safely Republican. We cannot say To the people of Georgia, we see you. We are drawing fair maps. We want you to be represented, while at the same time drawing lines that erase the extremely hard-fought gains of minority women in this state. We can definitely say we chose our voter instead of our voter choosing us. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.